The air in Asheville, North Carolina, carried the sharp bite of early fall, the kind that makes you pull your jacket tighter and wish for a bonfire. It was my 34th birthday, and I stood at the edge of a rented riverside venue, a charming wooden glass cabin tucked along the French Broad River. The string lights overhead swayed in the breeze, casting golden flickers across the gravel patio. I'd almost said no to this party. Years of dodging family gatherings had taught me to keep my distance, but Mom and Dad had insisted. Just a small thing, they'd said, nothing fancy. So I'd relented, pulled on my favorite emerald sweater, the one Ava once said made my eyes look less haunted, and showed up. I should have known better. The second I stepped through the gate, I felt it, that familiar knot in my gut, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for the storm. I'm Sophia, by the way, a reserved illustrator who'd rather spend nights sketching under a single lamp than play the dutiful daughter at family events. But tonight, I wanted to believe things could be different. The cabin smelled of cedar and vanilla candles, and a modest chocolate hazelnut cake, my favorite, sat on a folding table, surrounded by a dozen or so guests. Friends of my parents, a couple of cousins, and neighbors who'd known me since I was a kid in braces. Dead Richard was by the grill, flipping burgers with that proud grin he always wore when playing host. Mom, Diane, fussed over the table settings, her pearl earrings glinting as she moved. Everything looked perfect, like a postcard for a family that actually got along. But I knew better. I'd spent my whole life dodging the cracks beneath the surface, the ones that always seemed to widen when Ava was around. She was late, of course. 40 minutes to be exact. The gravel crunched under her boots as she swept in, her phone held high, live streaming to her thousands of Instagram followers. Ava, my younger sister by 3 years, was a walking spotlight. Blonde curls bouncing, leather jacket slung over a silk dress that hugged her like it was custom made. She didn't just enter a room, she consumed it. "We made it, loves," she announced, spinning her phone to capture the guests, most of whom froze, unsure if they were supposed to wave or duck. "Sophia's big birthday bash. Say hi, Internet." Her voice was all honey and razors, sweet enough to charm, sharp enough to cut. She hadn't even looked at me. I stood by the drink table, clutching a glass of lukewarm iced tea, my fingers tracing the condensation as I tried to blend into the background. I'd learned long ago that Ava's orbit left no room for anyone else. Dad wandered over, his hand landing heavily on my shoulder.
"Look at her,"
he said, chuckling, his eyes fixed on Ava as she posed for her stream. "She's a firecracker, isn't she?" I forced a smile, thin and brittle, the kind I'd perfected over years of being the quiet one. Mom handed me a slice of cake I hadn't asked for, her eyes darting toward Ava as she refilled her wine glass for the second time. No one noticed I didn't eat it. No one noticed much about me at all. The night dragged on, the string lights flickering like they were as tired as I was. I gave a short toast, my voice steady despite the weight in my chest. "Thank you for being here," I said, meaning it, even if the words felt small. That's when it happened. Ava gasped, loud and theatrical, cutting through the soft hum of conversation like a knife. "Wait, something's wrong!" She pointed toward the riverbank, her phone still filming. "I swear I saw someone out there by the trees." Heads turned. A cousin stood, squinting into the darkness. The music stopped, leaving only the sound of the river lapping against the shore. "Calm down, Ava," I said, stepping toward her, my voice low. "What are you doing?" She shushed me, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't read. "Hang on, operator," she said into her phone, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I'm at a party in Asheville. There's a man by the river, looks like he's carrying something, could be a weapon. It's giving domestic dispute vibes, you know." My stomach dropped. The words didn't even make sense, but they didn't have to. The guests were already whispering, their eyes darting between me and the tree. "Tell Ava," I hissed, my voice shaking now. She hung up, grinned, and waved her hand like she was swatting away a fly. "Just kidding, guys." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd, mostly from her followers watching the stream. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. She'd done it again, turned my moment into her stage, and I was just the prop. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed across the river, silent but impossible to ignore. 2 officers strode through the gate, their hands resting on their belts, eyes scanning the crowd. The guests stiffened. Someone muttered, "Is this real?" Ava giggled, waving them off like they were old friends. "Oh, officers, it's just a misunderstanding, a little birthday prank." They didn't smile. They took her statement, wrote up a report, and left. But the damage was done. The air turned sour, conversations fizzled, and half the guests mumbled excuses and slipped away. I couldn't breathe. I slipped into the cabin's bathroom, locked the door, and opened Ava's live stream on my phone. The comments were already flooding in. "She looks like she's gonna cry, lol, OMG, her face at 15:03 is gold. Who even invites this chick?" The words blurred as my hands shook. I deleted every social media app on my phone, my finger hovering over the screen like it could erase the humiliation too. When I stepped out, Dad was waiting by the kitchen, his face soft but firm. "Don't make this worse, Sophia," he said, like he was handing me a life lesson. "You know how Ava is. She didn't mean any harm." Didn't mean harm. The words hit like a slap, breaking something inside me I hadn't realized was still intact. I grabbed the cake box someone had packed for me, walked to my car, and sat there, keys in my lap, staring at the unopened box. Chocolate hazelnut, my favorite. But all I could see was Ava's grin, her phone, the way she turned my life into her content. My fists clenched until my nails bit into my palms. "They always protect her," I whispered to the empty car. And just like that, the sadness burned away, replaced by something sharper, something alive. I drove home through Asheville's quiet streets, the Blue Ridge Mountains looming in the distance like silent witnesses. My apartment was a small, cozy space I'd made my own, filled with sketchbooks, soft blankets, and the faint smell of lavender from the candles I burned to unwind. Jasper, my border collie, greeted me at the door, his tail wagging like nothing was wrong. I wished I could borrow his ignorance. I set the cake box on the counter, unopened, and stood there, staring at the walls I'd painted myself, the life I'd built despite always being the shadow to Ava's light. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just let the anger settle, heavy and certain, like a stone sinking to the riverbed. 2 nights later, I woke to the smell of smoke, thick and acrid, clawing at my throat. My eyes stung before I even registered the haze filling my bedroom. The fire alarm shrieked, its red light pulsing like a warning I was too late to heed. I bolted upright, my sheets tangling around my legs as panic surged through me. The air was hot, too hot, and through the haze I saw an orange glow seeping under my bedroom door. My heart slammed against my ribs. Fire. My apartment was on fire. "Jasper!" I choked out, my voice barely audible over the alarm. I stumbled off the bed, barefoot, coughing so hard it felt like my lungs were collapsing. My hand fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, my fingers trembling as I dialed 911. "Fire!" I gasped to the operator. "My apartment. It's in the living room, I think. I'm trying to get out." Jasper's frantic barking echoed from the hallway, guiding me through the smoke. I dropped to my knees, crawling to stay below the thickening haze. The heat pressed against my skin, and as I reached the hallway, a deafening crack split the air. A ceiling panel crashed down inches from my head, splinters grazing my cheek. I froze, my breath catching. then pushed forward, one hand over my mouth, the other gripping the wall. The hallway was a tunnel of smoke and shadow, but Jasper's barks kept me moving. I grabbed his leash off the hook as I passed, my eyes burning, my lungs screaming for air. The front door felt a mile away, but somehow I made it. I burst onto the porch, collapsing to my knees, coughing until my chest ached. Jasper circled me, frantic but unharmed, his fur warm against my shaking hands. The cool night air hit my face like a lifeline, but the relief was short-lived. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as red and blue lights danced across the driveway. Neighbors spilled out of their homes, porch lights flicking on one by one. Someone called my name, but my ears rang too loud to answer. Firefighters moved fast, faster than I'd expected, their hoses roaring as they battled the flames. A paramedic draped a blanket over my shoulders and pressed a water bottle into my hand. I didn't drink it. I just sat there, staring at the apartment building, my home, as smoke poured from the windows. The living room was gone. My art studio, my sketches, the easel I'd saved up for, all ash. The walls were charred, the patio door shattered. My neighbor, Mrs. Carter, a retired teacher with a kind face, knelt beside me, her voice soft. "Sophia, I saw someone out back around midnight. Hoodie, dark jeans, moving fast. The way they walked—" She hesitated, her eyes searching mine. It was familiar. Like they didn't want to be seen. My spine stiffened. "What did they look like?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Couldn't see their face," she said, "but the walk, it was confident, almost showy, like they knew they'd get away with it." I nodded, my mouth dry. In my mind I saw it, Ava's strut, that bounce in her step she'd had since we were kids, the one our dance teacher used to scold her for. It was her. I didn't say it out loud, not yet. I wasn't going to be the one to sound hysterical. But the pieces were snapping together, sharp and undeniable. The prank at my party, the fire, the timing. It wasn't a coincidence. Ava didn't just want attention, she wanted to burn me out of existence. By morning, the firefighters had contained the blaze, but the damage was done. My living room and studio were unrecognizable, the air thick with the sour stench of burnt plastic and wood. I stood in the driveway, still in my pajamas, as my parents arrived. Mom clutched her purse like it was a shield, her face pale. Dad stared at the blackened windows, his jaw tight. Neither of them stepped inside. "I'm just glad you're okay," Mom said, her voice trembling. "That's what matters." I nodded, but my eyes didn't leave the scorched patio door. "Mrs. Carter saw someone in the backyard at midnight," I said, my voice flat. "Hoodie, average height. I think it was Ava." Dad's brow furrowed. He turned to the fire chief, who was scribbling on a clipboard. "Could it have been electrical?" he asked, almost hopeful. "Old wiring, maybe?" The chief shook his head. "Started near the patio door. Kerosene accelerant on the floor. Not electrical. Arson." Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Sweetheart, that's a serious accusation," she said, her voice rising. "Ava wouldn't do that. That's not who she is." I looked at them both, my parents, the people who'd raised me to keep quiet, to smooth things over. "You don't even want to consider it, do you?" I said, my voice steady but cold. Dad shook his head, his eyes avoiding mine. "She's family, Sophia. Let's not jump to conclusions without proof." There it was, the same old refrain, "She's family." Like that excused everything. Like it erased the smoke still clinging to my clothes, the ashes of my life scattered across the lawn. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just turned away, my shoes crunching on the gravel, and walked back to what was left of my apartment. The air inside reeked, but I stepped over the broken glass, careful not to twist my ankle on the warped floorboards. In the hallway, a photo frame lay face down, singed and cracked. I picked it up, my hand steady despite the weight in my chest. It was a picture from 5 years ago, a family Thanksgiving at Ava's loft. We were all smiling, but the fire had melted the edge where my face was, curling it into nothing. I brushed ash off the glass and whispered, "You tried to burn me away, Ava, but I was still here, and I was done staying silent." I sat on the edge of my couch, the one piece of furniture the fire hadn't touched, and opened my laptop. My lungs still burned from the smoke, but I couldn't wait. The fire investigators had promised to follow up, but I'd grown up in a family where follow-up meant forget it. I wasn't letting this go. I clicked through my security camera footage, my heart pounding as the timestamp hit 12:18 a.m. There she was, a figure in a black hoodie emerging from the shadows by the neighbor's hedge. Tight jeans, sneakers with a worn left heel, and that walk, confident, almost performative. She tossed something through my patio window, a bottle wrapped in cloth. A flash followed, quick and brutal, then she ran, not scared, not frantic, but with purpose. At the edge of the frame, she turned just enough for the camera to catch her profile. High cheekbones, tight jaw, the faintest smirk. It was Ava. I'd know her anywhere. I paused the video, my finger hovering over the screen. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with certainty. This wasn't just a prank gone wrong. This was deliberate. I zoomed in, took screenshots, labeled folders, and backed everything up to a secure cloud. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I'd spent my life being told to let Ava's chaos slide, but this was different. This was my home, my safety, my life, and she'd tried to burn it all down. I sent the footage to Mom and Dad, a simple message attached. "Before I do anything else, watch this. All of it." I waited, my hands clenched around my coffee mug, the silence in the apartment heavier than the smoke. Their replies came in under 10 minutes. Mom, "Sophia, stop this obsession. Ava would never. Dad, that could be anyone. Not good for you, not good for me." Not a word about the fire, the kerosene, the fact that I'd nearly died in my bed. Just silence, dressed up as concern. Protecting Ava. As always. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking, not from fear but from something deeper. A betrayal that didn't scream anymore, just settled like ash. They didn't care if it was her. They cared if I made it public, because in our family, truth wasn't the goal, image was. And I'd been raised to keep the cracks hidden, to stay quiet so Ava could keep shining. But I was done. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. Timeline of events, the date of the fire, the camera timestamp, Mrs. Carter's statement, the kerosene, the bottle, Ava's smirk. It wasn't for them anymore. It was for me. I didn't stop there. I opened a local Asheville forum, one where neighbors swapped stories and warnings. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, no emotion, no hashtags, just facts. Fire department confirmed call at 12:27 a.m. Camera detected motion at 12:18 a.m. Footage shows individual in black hoodie throwing object through patio window. Flames visible by 12:21 a.m. Neighbor saw someone matching height and build flee. I uploaded the screenshots, grainy but clear enough. Sometimes silence becomes permission. I'd been silent too long. I hit post, closed my laptop, and walked away. The river outside was still flowing, steady and indifferent. I made tea, fed Jasper, and tried to ignore the buzz of my phone. But by the time I poured my second cup, it was vibrating off the table. 56 likes, 12 comments, 5 messages. The truth was out, and it wasn't just mine anymore. The morning after I posted the timeline on the Asheville forum, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I sat on the edge of my couch, Jasper curled up beside me, his warmth the only thing keeping me grounded. The air in my apartment still carried the faint sting of smoke, a reminder of the fire that had nearly taken everything. My post had exploded, shared across local groups, screenshotted to Twitter, even picked up by a Reddit thread titled, "Asheville Arson Drama." Sister versus sis comments poured in, some from strangers, some from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. I always knew Ava was trouble. "Sophia, you're so brave. This explains so much." But with every supportive message, a knot tightened in my chest. I'd ripped the bandage off our family's secrets, and there was no going back. I'm Sophia, the quiet illustrator who'd spent a lifetime fading into the background of Ava's spotlight. But now, at 34, I was done playing the silent sister. My birthday party 2 nights ago had been a disaster. Ava's fake 911 call turned it into her personal stage, leaving me humiliated. Then came the fire, the kerosene-soaked blaze that devoured my living room and art studio. Security footage showed Ava, hooded and smirking, tossing a Molotov cocktail through my patio window. I'd sent the evidence to Mom and Dad, but they'd dismissed it, protecting Ava as always. So I'd posted the truth online, and now Asheville was talking. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. By noon, my phone lit up with a new notification. Ava had responded, not on the forum, but on TikTok, where her curated life unfolded in soft filters and perfect lighting. The video was simple, a single candle flickering in a dim room, her voice soft and wounded. "Sometimes people twist the truth when they're hurting," she said, her eyes glistening just enough to sell the act. The caption read, "Pray for them." Her followers ate it up, "Sending love, Ava." People always try to dim your shine. The truth speaks for itself. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. She wasn't denying the fire. She was rewriting it, painting herself as the victim and me as the bitter, unstable sister. It was classic Ava. Never confront, just manipulate. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I walked into what was left of my living room, the walls blackened and peeling, the air heavy with the sour reek of charred wood. I set up my phone on a tripod, hit record, and looked straight into the camera. No makeup, no script, just me in a worn sweater, standing in the ruins of my home. "My name is Sophia," I said, my voice steady, despite the tremor in my hands. "I'm not here for sympathy or drama. I'm standing in what used to be my living room. 2 nights ago it burned. This is what happened." I turned, letting the camera catch the scorched walls, the shattered glass. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done pretending." I uploaded the video to the same forum, not expecting it to go anywhere. By evening, it was everywhere. Local Facebook groups, Twitter, even a small news outlet in Asheville. My inbox filled with messages, not just support, but stories. Strangers shared their own betrayals, their own silenced truths. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was bigger. But Ava wasn't done. The next morning, a knock came. Sharp, official. I opened the door to a man in a gray polo, holding a thin envelope. "Sophia Bennett?" he asked, his voice clipped. I nodded, and he handed it over. "Have a good day." I closed the door, my hands sweating as I stared at the legal stationery. Ava's name was printed at the top, followed by an attorney I didn't recognize. My heart thudded as I tore it open. 3 pages, cold and precise. A cease and desist letter accusing me of defamation, harassment, and causing emotional and professional harm. It demanded I remove my posts or face a lawsuit. The words blurred as I read them again, then again. She hadn't denied the fire or the footage. She'd just hired someone to scare me into silence. I sat on the couch, the letter trembling in my lap. For a moment I saw it, a courtroom, a judge's gavel, Ava's smirk as she spun her victim narrative. My chest tightened, the air in the room too thin. I hadn't slept properly since the fire, and now this. But I wasn't the same Sophia who'd stayed quiet at the party. I drove across town to a small law office Uncle Mark had recommended years ago. Rachel Kim, my attorney, flipped through the letter, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked up. "This is nothing," she said, her voice calm but firm. "No standing, just bullying dressed up in legalese. She wants you scared, Sophia." I exhaled, the weight lifting just enough to breathe. "She's trying to control the story," I murmured. Rachel nodded. "And if she couldn't do it with fire, she's using paperwork." I left her office, the letter tucked in my bag, and drove home through Asheville's winding streets. The Blue Ridge Mountains loomed in the distance, their quiet strength a stark contrast to the chaos in my life. But as I pulled into my complex, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its tinted windows reflecting the afternoon sun. It hadn't been there before. I gripped the steering wheel, my pulse quickening. Was I being paranoid? I'd already survived a fire, a near miss with falling debris, and now this. A vehicle that felt like a shadow trailing me. I parked, glanced back, and saw it pull away slowly. Too slowly. That evening, my phone rang. I let it ring twice, knowing who it was before I answered. "Sophia, it's Dad." Richard's voice was flat, careful, like he was navigating a minefield. "Ava's hurting too. This is getting out of hand. Public, messy. She says you've gone too far." "He set my apartment on fire," I said, my voice low but sharp. There was a pause, heavy and familiar. "Look, we don't want a family war," he said. "Let's calm this down." "She hired a lawyer, Dad. She's protecting herself." I hung up, my hands steady, my heart like stone. No tears, no shouting, just a quiet severing of the thread I'd been clinging to for years. I wasn't their peacemaker anymore. I updated my forum post that night, adding one line: "Legal letters don't erase video footage, and neither does silence." I hit save, and something shifted. The phrase caught fire, spreading across social media with the hashtag #SilenceIntPeace. People began sharing their own stories. Abuse survivors, whistleblowers, those who'd stayed quiet to keep families intact. It was humbling, overwhelming, and terrifying. I had opened a door I couldn't close, and Ava was about to walk through it. The next morning, I woke to a hard, angry knock. Thud, thud, thud. My heart stalled. Jasper growled, low and uneasy as I approached the door. Through the peephole I saw her, Ava, her hair wild, eyeliner smudged, a hoodie hanging off her shoulders like a cape of chaos. "Open the door, Sophia," she shouted, pounding harder. "I'm not playing." Neighbors peeked out, one holding a coffee mug, another pulling back curtains. I unlatched the chain and cracked the door, just enough for my voice to carry. "What do you want?" "We need to talk," she hissed, trying to shove the door open. I leaned into it, holding my ground. "Then talk here. You think you can ruin my life and hide like some saint?" Her voice was venom, her eyes flashing. "You always acted like you were better, the mature one." "I've been quiet," I said, my voice steady. "That's not the same thing." "I know what you did, Ava. I have the footage." She scoffed, stepping back. "You're pathetic." Then she turned, storming toward the garden gate. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and followed at a distance. In a blur of rage, she yanked up the hand-painted pottery I'd lined along the walkway. gifts from Mrs. Carter, some I'd made with my niece, and smashed them against the patio. Shards flew, glinting in the morning sun. Then she grabbed the glass wind chime Mom had given me when I bought the apartment, the only family gift I hadn't tucked away. She ripped it down, and it shattered against the concrete, its delicate chimes silenced forever. "Ava!" I shouted, but she wasn't listening. She paced, her hands shaking, her face red with fury. I called the police, not out of spite, but to mark the moment, to make it real. They arrived in 10 minutes, their expressions neutral as Ava shouted, "This is my sister! She's trying to make me look crazy!" The officer didn't flinch. "Ma'am, you've caused property damage and disturbed the peace. You're getting a citation. You'll need to appear in court." "I'll make you regret this," she screamed as they walked her to the squad car, not arresting her, just making her sit while they wrote the report. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching her unravel. My phone buzzed. "Mom," I answered, already knowing what she'd say. "Sophie, why didn't you just talk to her?" Laura's voice was tired, edged with blame. "You called the police on your sister." "Because she's not just my sister," I said. "She's a threat, and I'm done pretending she's not." I hung up, the silence that followed heavier than the smoke that still lingered in my home. I swept up the broken wind chime, the shards cutting my fingers just enough to sting. It felt like a metaphor for my life. Beautiful things broken by Ava's chaos, and me left to clean up the pieces. That night, I backed up everything. Videos, screenshots, the cease and desist letter, even Ava's TikTok post. I wasn't taking chances. But the next morning, Ava struck again, this time online. A burner account, unmistakably hers, posted a collage of weaponized fragments, old medical records from a panic attack I'd had a decade ago, a grainy photo of me in a hospital gown, pale and lost. The caption was cold. "Some people have patterns, connect the dots. No names, but everyone in our circle knew it was me." The post spread like wildfire, shared 67 times in hours. Comments poured in. Didn't she start the fire herself? Always seemed off, too quiet. Ava said she had issues. My breath came shallow, my hands useless over the keyboard. This wasn't just an attack, it was an execution. I sat frozen, the room spinning, until a new notification broke through. A video popped up in a private Asheville forum titled "Ava Unfiltered." It was grainy, filmed at a crowded bar, red cups and laughter in the background. Ava sat on a couch, drink in hand, grinning at the camera. "My parents would bail me out of anything," she said, her voice dripping with arrogance. "All I have to do is cry a little. Sophia, she's the placeholder kid, the one they got stuck with while they waited for me." She laughed, sharp and cruel, and the room around her echoed it. The thread exploded. Outrage, disbelief, people tagging friends, pulling receipts. A former intern of Ava's commented, "She made my life hell, left her studio in tears too many times. She thrives on breaking people." I didn't write a new post. I didn't need to. I reposted the video with one sentence. "She said it, not me." Then I walked away from the screen. That afternoon I left for groceries, the crisp Asheville air hinting at change. In the frozen aisle, a woman tapped my shoulder. I braced myself, but her eyes were kind. "You're the one from the video, right?" she asked. "Thank you for not letting people like her win." I nodded, unable to speak, a lump in my throat. When I got home, the video had been reshared over 1,000 times. I didn't read the comments. I made tea, fed Jasper, and sat on the porch, watching the late afternoon light stretch across the gravel. For the first time, the silence felt like power, not defeat. 3 weeks later, I stood outside the Asheville courthouse, my palms steady, a wind chime pendant from my niece around my neck. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing dramatic, just me. Inside, the air was cold, sterile, the kind of place where no one makes eye contact unless forced. Ava arrived late, her hair unbrushed, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, clinging to her lawyer like he could save her. Mom and Dad trailed behind. Richard's shoulders slumped, Diane clutching a damp tissue. I didn't speak to them, just sat in my row, waiting. The prosecution moved fast. They played the security footage. Ava in her hoodie tossing the Molotov cocktail, her smirk caught in the frame. They showed the burner account's digital trail linked to her login, then the bar video, her voice bragging about her untouchability. Her lawyer tried to spin it, stress family drama, context, but it fell flat. The judge's ruling came, cold and final. Sufficient evidence for arson and defamation charges. Trial set. Ava stood, her voice cracking with fury. "You're ruining everything," she shouted. At me, at the judge, at the room. The bailiff told her to sit. She didn't. Her lawyer tugged her arm, but she just shook, her sunglasses slipping to reveal red-rimmed eyes. But didn't flinch. She'd wanted me to crumble in public. Now it was her turn. Outside, reporters swarmed, their cameras snapping as Dad stepped into the sunlight. "Mr. Bennett, you've been a community leader for decades," one shouted. "How long did you know your daughter was capable of this?" He froze, his jaw locked, and in that 2-second pause, his carefully crafted image cracked. By evening, it was on every local news feed. Civic leader's daughter faces arson charges. I didn't watch. I was home, barefoot in my ruined living room, running my fingers over the charred walls. Mom showed up that night, unannounced. She didn't cry or hug me, just walked to the blackened counter and traced the ash-streaked edge. "I don't know how we let this happen," she whispered. I didn't offer comfort. "You didn't let it happen," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You watched it happen." She didn't argue, just left, her footsteps soft against the gravel. 2 months later, my apartment was almost whole again. I'd painted the walls warm beige, chosen new sketchbooks, and planted lavender along the back fence. It was blooming now, purple and defiant. There was no family reunion, no apologies, just mornings that felt like mine. I received a letter from Mom, handwritten, uneven. "I don't know how we didn't see you. I'm sorry for letting Ava's noise drown you out." I folded it, tucked it in a drawer, and whispered, "Too late." But I didn't tear it up. Ava took a plea. Community service, therapy, restitution. Her social media was gone, her name a whisper now. I didn't gloat. I didn't need her downfall. I just needed my air back. That weekend, I hosted my trauma support group in my yard. We sat in folding chairs, passing coffee and stories, laughter mingling with the river's hum. A new member, Claire, gave me a silver wind chime, its etched leaves catching the light. "I used to think silence was survival," I said, turning it in my hands. "Now I know it's where you begin again." That night, I hung the wind chime on the porch, its soft chime dancing in the breeze. I opened my laptop, hit record, and spoke to anyone who'd ever been told to stay quiet for peace. Peace that demands your silence isn't peace, I said. It's control. My name is Sophia. I survived, and I'm still here. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and listened to the wind chimes sing. It was steady, whole, mine.